hardships in the world. Because something inside for a very long time, for me, I've been drawn to looking at sometimes things which are violent in life, you know. I also grew up not with violence. So, well, I mean, yeah, I got some good beatings from my uncle and stuff, but I don't think it's about that. I was wondering, what is this fascination with these things? There's so much cruelty is expressed in life, you know. And many people they can't look at it, and other people are completely drawn to it. And I was always, you know, like somehow pulled towards that, towards just looking at it, at things which are kind of like a part of you don't want to see, and looking at it. You know, it's been sort of fermenting something inside, and I wanted to kind of look at why is that? Why is this this fascination? Why is this violence in the world? Why is this? Because I see some, I mean, really terrible things. Yesterday I was watching about what was happening in Sri Lanka with the Tamil and it's so wicked. It's just so wicked that the government would target innocent people and bomb hospitals after they said that we're making this a safe zone, and actually go to just to exterminate the people. It's just so, you know, you think, you know what, where does my words come in all of this? Because I can't have a teaching that's separate from this. Understand? I can't have a teaching that is just about, you know, life is blissful and life is just, you know, beautiful and so, because for some people it's not. It's terrible, it's horrible. And so is spirituality only for like people who have had a cozy life with a little bit of difficulty, some little personal things? Or does it apply to people who have been into situations like this, into wars and famines and great destruction, and who seem to be at the dark end of human selfishness, arrogance, and power, and all the nasties? Should we just forget about that and just talk about, well, you know, let's be thankful we were in a nice part of the world where we don't have to do that, where we can meditate every day, and we can sit and we can sing bhajans and feel very happy, and, you know, should we forget that doesn't happen? I say no. Where does it come? So it's been emerging inside, because I don't feel that truth can exclude anything. It has to be that it incorporates and has completely eyes open, no dark glasses, that look at life and say, where does this come in? Where does this fit in? And I see that people ask these kind of questions, but I don't know if they could cope with the answers that come. You know? Because we have a concept that life should be comfortable, that we came here, we have a right, you know, we have rights and so on, which is also a part of consciousness's, you know, expression, and about on the right side of consciousness, on the side of hope and truth and loving kindness and compassion and so on. But there's another side of consciousness, which is dark and heavy and selfish and painful and destructive and so on. That's also part of the same consciousness, has these polarities there. And I see that in countries and amongst people who have things, who have abundance, and who have what the majority of us have been conditioned to aspire for, which is a nice family, a nice home, enough money, comfortable life and so on, is this consciousness's, you know, our highest expression. And I see it's not. That it's not to come to this world to have fun. It's not to come to this world, you know, to have all the things that human being thinks are so great. For consciousness has to choose itself. Consciousness must choose consciousness, and not choose time, not choose what is impermanent, what not true, you know, like this. And there's a side of the human nature that's very, very strongly gravitates towards comfort, bodily comfort, and so on. And this is why we are so afraid of death. You see? And that's why in our fear of death, we actually kill in the name of our own fear. We do more terrible things to try and preserve something that we cannot preserve, actually. And even if people exterminated millions of people, they themselves will be taken from life anyway at some point. So we cannot beat life. We just cannot do it. But what I've seen on the other side is that with those who suffer and go through tremendous pain, it is of great benefit to our spiritual growth. It's almost as though, like, sometimes the worst pain you can go through, it completely cuts the trivial mind. It cuts the petty things, the like wanting to have these fantasies about life and I'm gonna have a lovely home and I've got lovely children. From that side, it completely cuts it and brings you back into the present, to look beyond the shallowness of material possessions, and even to try and this kind of eternal dream of being together in a nice way and stuff like that. Cut all of that, because it's not true, and brings us back to the nakedness, to the naked consciousness that you are just here, and to find your being and understand what your being is. And as for the ones who perpetrate violence, who glorify, or who are the cause, the active, the oppressors and the murderers and the haters and so on, they are also needed as expressions of consciousness as well, to carry out those acts. But it will be terrible for them also, even if in this life it's not seen by those who would like to see justice from the notion of the concept of justice from the general population, that they also go through severe experiences, severe existence in their own way. I remember something in the Bible that Jesus was saying, that is like, what about those people who were like innocent, who died when this great wall fell on top of them and so on, and caused by their enemies to be killed like this? And he said, these things must happen. But woe, God help those through whom they come, meaning that the ones who are the expressors of that evil, they themselves they are also have a heavy karma in the life. But that life cannot be without this suffering. It just cannot be. This is the message. It cannot be without pain. It cannot be without jealousies, because all of these, they help human beings to mature, to find the truth, because without it, we just develop into these sugar-coated beings who are very weak and very shallow. And we're seeing also in countries where, we are in material abundance, how weak people are internally, spiritually. They're selfish also. You got a lot more, but you're selfish very often, and very weak, really petty, and in that way. And in places where there's been real hardship, it doesn't mean that's no heaven either, but at least the people are more real. They have more sense of what it is to be compassionate, to be kind and understanding, to know what suffering, know what pain is. And they don't want to see that inflicted upon other people, because they've felt it. And that's how you gain the badge of compassion. That's how you gain the real compassionate heart. It's not just by being comfortable and giving someone 50 euros to go and have a meal. It's something much more powerful than that. So as long as we hold on to the concept that life should be equal, and life should be, everybody should have a nice meal and have a nice place to live and so on. This is a human paradigm, a kind of a fantasy about human life, about equality that's very shallow. It has very little understanding in it. That life has always been full of these contrasts. That there's going to be those who are rich. They're going to be rich for a while, and there will be a season when they will be poor. There will be a season when they, it's not that even the rich are having a great life. They're not having a great life, because wealth is not a great life. It isolates you from from real trust. You don't know who to trust, who are really your friends. You have a lot of, they have their own kind of suffering. But most of us feel that we'd be happy to have that type of suffering, to have what they have. But you don't know until you have that. And I see that, the power of God in everything. That is so, yes, I look at the pictures that I see of people being murdered and children being blown up and just bodies torn to bits and women raped and murdered and stuff like this, And you say, how can you justify? I say, I cannot justify. But I can observe and I can learn and I can see the hand of God. Because if you look upon life as just, you're born, you live, you die, and that's it, vanish, never again, then you'd say, wow, that is very, very heavy. That's very heavy, because some children won't even come out of the womb alive. So what was the purpose of their even being conceived if they won't even make it out? They won't even have a first day, not even a first birthday. They won't even have a first day of life. So where does that come into it, And I say that life is a river. It's like a river that is flowing on and on and on and on. And the consciousness just takes new forms to continue in this growth, because most of us, we cannot do it in one life. We cannot clean ourselves in one life. I can see it now clearly. We cannot do it without, unless, through the grace of God. All the beings are in this river, and some are nearer to the sea, and some come out in the sea, and some are still up in the hills. They're still going to the streams and so on to make it. That is, but it's one life, one river, one water. Whether you call it rain or you call it river or you call it ocean, it's just one thing. And I see this very strongly inside my being, that there are some beings who are now ready to be absorbed into the totality. They have been, the river has been through many valleys, and they've refined themselves somehow. But we are walking on the same street, with Buddhas and demons. That we're all in the same thing. But you may say, well, but why are there so little Buddhas and so many baddies? So many Buddhas, so many baddies, This I cannot answer, because it just maybe mean that it's the history of life, and that then if it takes so little to actually graduate into freedom, and so many who won't, it means that then life must perpetuate for a very, very, very long time. It just means that life will be perpetuated for a very long time. If 1,000 come in and one come out every now and again, then this whole movement, the drive of evolution and life, will just continue. And if life exhausts the human expression, it will find another form to continue. The consciousness has to grow in another form. If human beings exterminate themselves, not that human beings exist as independent, autonomous beings. They don't. They are expressions of consciousness. The consciousness just continue, evolving into new forms if it needs to do that. But what it started has to finish. And this evolutionary drive of life, going through these sometimes, in a way, if people could take what I say right now, that somehow even a war, the intensity of suffering is almost like the intensity of grace in another way. Because it's so, if you did not have that intensity of suffering, then maybe you would live in a climate of material mediocrity for maybe, another 10 lifetimes. Because the attraction is so much in the human expression of consciousness to go for the comfort and for the lightweight. Although even there we are going to suffer, because if you're attached to material life, when you have to leave it, you are going to suffer. If you're attached to people, when they leave, you're going to suffer. It's like the suffering is on every level. It's just the scale and the intensity and the visual intensity of the form that it takes. And that when you have a tremendous, intense bout of intense experience, it burns a lot. It's like white fire. You see, white fire burns so fiercely that things are just finished in a very quick time.
White fire?
Well, you have a fire usually orange, no? And it's if you find the slowest fire is a bit orange, it burns. It's fire, it burns. But if you look at the very intense fire, it almost goes white. If you look through a blowtorch at the most powerful point, it's like white. It's the most hot. And it's almost like this white fire intensity of life. It burns a lot of stuff, very, very, very quickly. Like in satsang, we see it also, where people come to satsang, they're expecting, a sort of lightness and joy and this stuff. And you get that also because that is also the icing on the cake in a way. But sometimes what happens is that it starts to burn the hardcore stuff, the hidden stuff that's not seen, that we suppress, that we don't want to see, the side of our nature we don't want to see and we suppress. But in the light of truth, or the power of consciousness or presence of God, then those energies can't stay hidden. They come to the surface, and that's why people feel terrible sometimes. They get sick and the resistance, they want to run away, this thing. And I encourage them to stay because that has to be vomited out. And I say sometimes that, what might have taken you 7-10 years to process, in satsang, maybe just in a few days, it gets burnt because of the intensity of the fire of satsang. It's in the same way that you experience a kind of state of suffering and misery and so on. And it can take the form of, psychological, emotional, intensity and pain. And some people prefer physical pain to emotional pain. They're both forms of intense experience, they leading to the state of suffering. But this is the only way that I can include. And I see, my heart is just alive with that seeing. That there has to be a purpose of all of this. It cannot just be that, there's no God. I see God very much in this. In the fire of life. Where things burn and the acid of life, I see God. And sometimes in the nice, sweet little moments when we have time to paint our fingernails, and to go to the spa and to meet and have a cappuccino and to complain about, our calories and stuff like that. I see sometimes the devil actually in that. And because you lose your vitality, you lose the power of your being, succumbs to just stupid things, stupid expressions of life, And I see in situations where there's intense pain, I see the presence of God also there. But you have to have the mindset, you have to have the inner maturity that will open up insights and wisdom inside you to see and to appreciate life in all of its expression. Because there is a side to us that's been educated, that's been conditioned to go for what is pretty and soft and pink and all of that, like that's a nice life, and to have other people praise you and say, oh, he's so great, and look, he has a Lamborghini and all of this type of stuff. But it's not a life at all, at the real level. And many people, we see that people who have these things, they commit suicide and they jump out of bridges and high buildings just because something is still unbearable, even in that expression. I've been to countries where I've been very, very wealthy, and I find very little soul connection there, very, very little soul expression there, just a kind of coldness, sort of like that people are dead. And I've found in countries where there's been poverty and sickness and so on, a lot more compassion and openness, a softness and depth of life as I know it to be, more expressed in that. Now, can I say that I prefer this life? I would not want to choose it. It's very hard for the human being to choose it. And there are some people who say that perhaps before we were launched into this life, into this bodily life, at one time we had to review our lives, and that we possibly chose to have a life that was going to bring these difficulties that would keep us more near to God or to realize the truth. You see? And that we had the choice of choosing a life that was also full of a lot of pleasures, but the game would be longer. I don't know, but I am open to this seeing because I see there's a place for this. Why not? if you could think before you live, rather than live and then think about it. If you could think about it and choose before it from the highest place in God's kingdom to choose. You may choose a life, a material life, a human life that has real challenges to keep you so that you don't stray. Because many people who have so-called done well in the world, you know, for me they're spiritually very weak. They're not necessarily has to be like that, but I'm saying very often it is like that, because we go for the thing that will perpetuate our bodily existence, and we don't think in terms of our soul life, of our heart life, but more just of our bodily life. That is where we put the emphasis and the value on the bodily life, you know, and the emotional life. So this is what came as I reflected, and sometimes for me it has been very good, you know, to be alone, because these were the contemplations and the insights that awaken in me when I contemplate like that. So that is perhaps a new avenue of expression that's going to come through satsang more and more now. I feel like God opens up these avenues of seeing how it can be expressed, whether there are people. It's going to make for very difficult listening for some people, but also it's such a liberation. It's such a liberation, you know, because even in this body, it's kept some fear in this body, and that fear, I see it served inside to keep an alertness. It keeps that attention there, to keep the attention just in the nucleus of the heart. You know? So I feel that it's a much wider view for me now. The thing is that where the teaching is important and where, you know, masters are important is to be able to present a higher view of life to people, because much of our suffering is also to do with our interpretation of, you know, sometimes great blessing are here, but they're not seen because we have a different paradigm, we have a different belief of what a good life should be. And it doesn't include painful situations. So the minute when something feels painful, we see it as bad. If you see something bad, then you suffer because you think, why is this bad thing only happening to me? But through what I've just been expressing, if you open your mind up to see that, then you can accept these states more and grow much more speedily through them. You see? Because it's not just the actuality of the situation that we suffer, it's the interpretation that we suffer. We suffer from our interpretations, what we take things to represent. This is why I say man doesn't have to change things materially so much. He has to change his perspective, the way that we look at the life that is being lived on so many levels of expression. So I mean, I'm happy that we're recording this somehow, because I feel that it is just arising in my heart to say this now, and that the people who listen to this will have space inside them to reflect on it, to not just dismiss it immediately, but to listen again and again and again until some space opens up. Because really, contrary to how we may react by hearing something like this, like we're making an excuse for violence or something like that, because that's the way the mind can see it. He's justifying that there's violence, that it's okay to be violent. That's a very shallow way. Please stop and keep quiet and listen. Listen inside your heart more. And learn from your own situation, because there's no human being that is exempt from suffering states. And look, even if you don't understand what I'm saying on the bigger picture, look in your own life and see that you have grown not just from sugar-coated experiences, but often from painful experiences. That's what has really stepped up your growth, has really deepened your maturity, who have really contributed to your life. But we still don't learn to say thank you for those. We say thank you for the things that we should say no thank you to. You see? And we say, you know, no thank you to the things that you should say yes, you should be on your knees for, and say thank you that you brought this maturity in this life through the means that were necessary for me to learn. So I feel that what I'm speaking is offering mankind a way out. It's not to say, you know, to condone violence, because it's not to condone violence, because who but someone whose heart is very much dark, can be the perpetuator of suffering intentionally. You see? But even unintentionally, we can't help. We, even without anybody else, we create our own suffering. Something inside us engineers suffering because we have to taste that as consciousness to keep back, to keep in the state of consciousness. You see, rather than just go slipping off into those mental zones that just make us just turn your life into porridge, basically. You know. So why I found this, why I'm seeing this, because I so hated the look of violence. I so hated to see. But why is this? Why is this? I so hated it that I had to look and to find God's eyes and God's mind in me. Or where does this come in? And I can only see it. But he said, but you may say, but does it have to go so far? Does it have to be so horrible? And this I cannot answer. I can just say sometimes the more horrible something is, the more it burns out what is superficial and, you know, what is valueless inside us. Because we have a propensity towards holding on to things which are valueless. Not just valueless, but they leave seeds of darkness and to sprout later inside us. They leave a kind of static, they leave a hardness of heart inside us that many people tell me, you know, my heart feels hard, it doesn't open and stuff like this. You see? And I try to help them from the highest perspective, but they can't assimilate that highest perspective. Yes, they have got to go through. And sometimes I wondered, you know, like I went myself to so many states to be where I am here. And many people I'm passing down in a way to make a road that was easier for them in a way. I didn't plan that in my mind, I'm going to do this to make road. But I always had this place that if salvation is only for me, if it's only for me, I don't want it. It's not appealing for me. If salvation is only for me, it's always been, it has to be for us. It has to be that if I go through the door, then I have to hold it free so others can go, as many can come through as possible until my strength fails me. It has always been like something inside me like that. So if God was saying, no, I like you, MooJi, you come in. I said, no, but I have these friends and these friends. And how many friends? Well, I've got 7.5 billion of them, actually, if I can come in like that. So if I find a solution, it cannot just be for me. It must be for me first, because it has to be my eyes that have to be clear. And then as much as possible to see if the eyes of other beings can be more clear about these things. And of course, not everybody's going to accept it. People are going to, what are my words? To flush them down the toilet, and that's okay. I'm not asking for membership, but I just feel in my heart that it has to be spoken because I've seen so much pain and pain of the world. Sometimes people see and they see me and they say, "There's a lot of peace in you, but there's also pain in you." And I said, "Yes, the pain of the whole world is in me. You know, the pain of the whole of existence is in me, but also the joy of God is in me. The light of truth is in me. So I'm all of it. I'm all of it. I'm all the suffering is inside me."
But where do they really come from when they say there's a lot of pain in you?
Well, because there is something that is there. I don't. It's not like it's not crippling me, but I think because of the love that is there inside my heart for life, then if I'm gonna have love for life, I have to carry life's pain as well. Somehow it's inside my being. I can't pick and choose. I take the nice bits and leave the, because I grew up like that as well too. That you want the nice bits. I'm not different from other human being. I want the nice bits, but then I get a chance to look at the nice bits and say they're not so nice. They're not so nice. I don't need a life with mansions. I don't need all these things. My life has always been comfortable, simple. But of course, you have your extravagances a bit sometimes. I don't need 30 T-shirts. You understand? So this is kind of my extravagance.
But even if the 30 T-shirts, they're normally 30 T-shirts from the cardboard sale, so it's not so.
Yeah. I hope today's message, I feel it came from the heart of God, and I hope it goes into the heart of God in the form of other human being, if they have space for it. But I don't expect that it's going to go down so well initially. But I feel good that something like I took it out, put it out. I feel like that this morning.
This is all taking place in your presence. Don't bind yourself to anything